Good evening, everybody. Welcome back. It is Wednesday evening, and we're here for some cozy story time. Also, if you guys are having trouble hearing me, please let me know. I'm still working on audio levels and hoping that you can actually hear me. It's a constant struggle for me, so apologies in advance. I hope you guys are all having a good week. Happy Wednesday. And I am here to bring you some awesome stories. And I'm just gonna take a real quick look at some settings before I get started. Give me a second here. Oh, that's pretty high actually. Yeah. Well, welcome in, Panda. Don't know if I have a mod yet this evening, so I'm gonna do this myself. See if it works. Yay, it worked. I'm still tweaking some technical things really on the stream end of stuff. Making sure shoutouts work, making sure everything is working as it should. Still some small tweaks to make, but pretty happy with how my stream is going so far. It's good to see you this evening, Panda. Hope you're feeling a little better. I know you haven't been feeling wonderful, so I hope you're feeling at least a little better. It's good to see you. Let's see. And I see a couple of other people hanging out. Man, I can't type today. Oh, people are lurking, so I can't shut them out. It doesn't work. It's all good, though. So I am just getting stuff settled, and then I'll be reading in a couple of minutes. Always trying to make sure that I have lots of water, because that's important when you're reading. It's very important to stay hydrated, whether you're reading or whatever you're doing, because dehydration is nothing to mess with. So, oh goodness. Alright, so we are actually starting a new story tonight. It's a short one, so I may actually be able to get through all of it this evening. It's incomplete, so it was originally 3 really short chapters, so I'm probably going to treat it as a one-shot. I think I can get through the whole thing this evening. So, it's a story called Behind Enemy Lines. It's the first story in the 3rd series in the arc that I helped write 15 or 20 plus years ago. So yeah, a little bit of history. For Panda's benefit, since she's new here, new to the stream at least, my name is Meshla, and I am primarily an audiobook streamer. I write and read my own Star Wars fan fiction on my stream. I also alternate between playing some SWTOR and doing some writing workshops with said stories. So Sunday, that's actually what I did. I did a workshop where I worked on Behind Enemy Lines, because I hadn't touched it in probably 10 years. So to date myself just a little bit, these stories were primarily written while I was still in high school, so you may notice that the grammar is a bit rough, even with me trying to clean it up and polish it a little bit. So, just a warning on that. Alright. Trying to get my mic situated here. Okay. Push that up a little bit. Okay. Make sure I have the right window open. Okay. Got multiple screens going over here. So I'm actually going to do... There we go. Okay. All right. Yeah, and for those who find it helpful, I am running closed captioning. I try to remember to turn it on, especially when I'm reading, to help people out. So hopefully that is helpful for you. All right. Okay. So, like I said, this story is called Behind Enemy Lines. It is part 1 of the series called To Save a Galaxy, which is the 3rd series in the overall arc. And here we go. And for anybody who is interested in reading some of the other stories, you can find them here. Or you can also find my VODs on my YouTube if you'd like to watch that way. And you can feel free to play with the commands or the channel point redeems. They are there for your enjoyment. I'm going to turn the music. Okay. Alrighty. Turning down the music a little bit on my end so that I don't blast my eardrums. There we go. Okay. Make that a little bigger, actually. I feel like I'm blind. Oh my goodness. There we go. Alright. A week after the hectic events on Renvar and what happened to Ari and Mikron, Zan sat in his office in the Intelligence Center, reviewing files of the new recruits to the Intelligence Service. He purposefully kept one file for last, however. The young female apprentice who had distinguished herself under his command on Renvar, the one he'd later taken as his first Padawan learner. After getting through the rest of the files and setting alpha level clearance for the rest of them, he finally brought up his Padawan's file. Name, Sharon Mulren. Age, 14. Padawan Mulren has shown a marked aptitude in map reading, tracking, and other skills that would suit her well for the Intelligence Division. Her saber skills are passable, but with more training, I feel she would be well suited for Soresu. While studious, Padawan Mulren is very quiet and reserved. She prefers working alone to working with groups. This could be a problem area later. Padawan Mulren is highly detail-oriented and quite adept at solving puzzles. This analytical skill would serve her well in the intelligence field. Zan thought to himself. He had to admit that quiet and introspective sorts were usually better in some more sensitive areas. If Sharon were to work well with him, she would need to be brought out of her shell. Soresu for blade skills would accompany that reserved part of her personality, and that could raise a problem. He had to admit, though, that the analytical skills she had on hand were critical in the intelligence field. Without bothering to close the file, he opened a temple-wide comm. Apprentice Sharon Mulren, please report to the Intelligence Center for briefing. Apprentice Sharon Mulren to Intelligence for briefing. Thank you. He continued to review her file, including her academic records, while waiting for her arrival. Sharon had been working on an assignment for her astrogation course when the summons had sounded over the temple-wide comm. She flushed and closed her reader, putting it on the shelf as she rose from the study carrel in her quarters. The voice had belonged to Master Canidius. The thought of him in his armor put the faint sensation of butterflies in her stomach. With a sigh, she stood and smoothed her tunic before she left, moving quickly through the corridors until she stood outside his office. Nervously, she brushed her brown hair away from her face. If one looked closely, one could have seen a faint scattering of freckles across her nose. Her brown eyes were bright. Bouncing on her toes a few times, she took a couple deep breaths before she pressed the admittance key. "Ah, apprentice," Zan said as she entered the lobby. "Astrogation can wait a bit. Please, come to my office. I have some questions for you before we start on other things." The whole time he wore his helmet, his ploy was to get her slightly frazzled and help determine her character. Sharon nodded, letting out a breath as she looked over at him. Something about the armor left her with goosebumps. Her eyebrow rose slightly as he mentioned the homework she had just been working on. "Certainly, sir." She'd almost addressed him as master, but remembered at the last moment that he didn't particularly like the title. She followed him into the office and settled into the chair across from his desk before clasping her fingers in her lap to keep from fidgeting. Zane waited for her to sit and noticed how she chose to sit. Fingers laced. She's on edge. Good, he thought, and mentally smiled. He motioned to the hollow file over his desk. "I've been reading this file very closely for the last little while, and I'm intrigued. Top 3% in mathematics, top 5% in languages, working on an astrometrics degree. However, there is little to no field action before Renvar, no social activities or even friends. Is there an explanation for this?" Sharon flushed. "There is, sir." Her voice was quiet but could still be heard clearly. I don't get along with people very well." She fidgeted. "They make fun of me because I'm so good at math. I like learning," she admitted, her gaze hovering somewhere between his visor and the wall above his head. "I've had difficulty learning some of the saber forms and hand-to-hand techniques, and, well," she sighed again, "I think the council sent me to Renvar for that reason." She shrugged, feeling as if she were tripping over her words. Zan raised an eyebrow at the last statement. The council often did that, sending fresh apprentices to the battlefield while all previous indications were that the particular apprentice was suited for more scholarly activities. Sharon's performance, as was noted by the council, was the sort of thing that they were hoping for. Zan saw what she was capable of himself. Her file only showed she was limiting herself, afraid to step on toes. But Renvar had proved that she could work better if allowed to break free from those constraints. Zan sighed audibly and looked over at her. "The Jedi teach restraint, yes, but too much restraint kills the initiative. It was your initiative that caught my attention on Renvar. Frankly, it seems you felt more free there." She flushed. "It was invigorating. I can't really explain it. I felt more at home doing that than I think maybe I have amongst all my books here." She chewed her lip thoughtfully for a moment. "I was able to put things into place. For me, everything has a pattern and a purpose. I saw things in a way that just made sense." She shrugged, feeling that her words were an inadequate description. "You broke your chains, and your self-imposed meaning of restraint and reacted naturally, is what you did, Sharon," Zan said harshly, like a teacher would, driving home an important lesson. "You can't cut yourself off from others, events, or anything else. A Jedi's mindset must be in the present, accepting all and responding in a way that flows with the Force, not restricting themselves." Now was the moment he built to. It was time to see if she had fire under her skin. "All that I see here is statistics, not a Jedi," he said, thinking to himself, "All right, girl, time to snap at me." Sharon blinked, and when her eyes opened again, it was as if they were even brighter than before. She sputtered for a moment in surprise. "You have no idea what it's like, do you?" Her tone was soft, but there was an edge that hadn't been there before. She was visibly trying to regain control, but everything bubbled to the surface. "You think it's easy to find someone who understands, that you find it fun to spend hours on puzzles?" She stopped momentarily and almost succeeded in stopping her next words, which came out even quieter. "I was 5 when the Jedi found me. I started freaking my parents out because I started tearing apart the electronics in the house. I could see what was wrong with them. They thought I was crazy, but I always knew. What would you do if your parents and all their friends made you feel like you were cute, but inside that they thought you were some freak? When I came here, I was so traumatized I couldn't talk for months. Do you know how they finally got me to talk? One of the kids handed me a toy. It was broken, and I fixed it." She stopped and took a ragged breath. Her fingers crawled into the fabric of her tunic. "And you wonder why people scare me." Zen took this all in and then started laughing, long and hard. He noticed Sharon bristle even more, so he opened himself to her in the force and continued laughing. He reached up and after a moment pulled off his helmet, which, if she had paid attention to her studies on Mandalorians, she would have known was significant. He sat there looking at her for a moment, still laughing, but with understanding in his eyes. He finally got a grip on his amusement and toggled the computer to voice mode. It was time to do the symbolic action and show her exactly what she had accomplished. "Computer, recognize apprentice Sharon Moran as an agent of the intelligence service. Set information clearances to Alpha 1 priority, and mark her as apprenticed under Zan Canadius. Authorization code Canadius Omega Epsilon Delta 459. He looked her in the eye and then said to the computer, "Acknowledge." Sharon gasped, her eyes widening as Zan reached up and pulled off his helmet. She knew that a Mandalorian didn't do such things lightly. And his laughter, force it made her angry until she realized why. Her eyes were as big as tea saucers at his following words, and she looked ready to faint. She then opened her mouth and was finally able to summon words. "You did that on purpose." But there wasn't an edge there anymore. She just stared at him as if by looking into his eyes she could read him. She then relaxed, at least a little bit. "So, what now?" Zan chuckled again. "So it's about bloody time you got out of your shell and started kicking shebs and becoming the Jedi I know you can," he said. The general, the wise-cracking Jedi, was back, just like he was on Renvar. "Time for you to let others in and become stronger, and for you to help me out in this mess we find ourselves in." He looked at her long and hard, but the harshness of the test was gone. "Now that you have my level of clearance, you can go over my file and see how similar we are. But that can be done at your leisure, which you need more of, by the way." He got up and moved to the small counter in the back of the office. "While you are my apprentice, you have permission to always speak your mind unless you get an order. Can I get you a refreshment?" "Please." Her eyes had gotten huge again, and her cheeks faintly flushed when he'd mentioned reading his file. "I'll have tea or juice, whichever you have. Not really a fan of calf." She made a face, but grinned when she noticed the look on his own. She tilted her head slightly. What mess would that be? He poured a cup of Behat for Sharon and got himself a cup of calf before returning to the desk, placing Sharon's Behat first. The mess of what in the name of the Mando were Imperial commandos doing on Renvar in the first place, and how they avoided the Sith. I've got some theories, but I want to know your thoughts. Sharon nodded her thanks, murmuring a soft "foray," and noticing his reaction with a faint grin. After a sip of the warm liquid, Sharon chewed her lip for a moment. "Well, I know there's been much more activity in the region lately, like they're testing the waters. From what I've read, the Remnant's been rather reclusive in the past 20 years or so. What interest they'd have in Renvar is anyone's guess. If they're anything like the Empire of old, they don't like Force users." She frowned. "If that's the case, though, why would they be on a planet full of them? Maybe scouting it for a base and using the battle as cover?" She shook her head at the thought. "No, they'd been there longer than that. That captain knew his way around." Zan smirked. "I'm as interested in knowing why a whole squad was detained and left with their weapons, and what appears to be no attempt on the part of the squad to use the weapons to break out." He scratched his chin. "And we don't even know what division the squad was in, nor the warlord that commands them." Sharon frowned. "The only way they could have been left intact was—" She shook her head, but it was the only thing that made sense. "To act as a diversion for us. But that would mean they were working with the Sith. Why would they possibly do that?" She swirled her mug and stared into the dark liquid as if trying to divine the answer from the contents of the mug within. Zan growled. "Right. Now your guess is as good as mine. This brings me to your first assignment. Do you recall overhearing any of the Ratkins say the Exo's name, by chance?" In reply, Sharon's eyes drifted closed. Slowly, she ran through the battle in her mind, paying close attention to when any of them spoke. Her mouth quirked at Zan's term for them, but it was apt. It was a few quiet minutes before she frowned again and nodded. Rask. Zan also nodded and motioned for her to use the console. I want you to review every file on every division of Imperial troops listed and find this Rask's division and warlord. Since your slicing skills are... Whoops, and I'm going to stop right there because... Oh, no, okay. But you have an ad coming up. Let's see. Let's see. Okay. Since your slicing skills are better than mine, he drew a smirk from Sharon at that. Yeah, later. Meanwhile, see what you can find that I can't. While you're doing that, I'll get on the horn to the old folks and the sergeant-at-arms and get the Pargila cleared for travel. Sharon grinned when he called the council the old folks. Shaking her head, she nodded and slid into the chair behind his desk. Within moments, she was up to her ears in coding, focusing almost entirely on the task. Absently, she reached for the mug of Behat before brushing a few strands of brown hair from her face. Finding something took her over 2 hours, but it was better than nothing. All she'd found was a garbled fragment of a document ordering the Delta Squad of the 72nd Intelligence Command to Renvar. The portion containing the actual orders was damaged beyond repair and completely unreadable. Meanwhile, Zan calmed Stefan, and to his surprise found him in his chambers adjacent to the council room. Did Calico clear you for work, or are you trying to get her shebs in a knot just for fun? He said with an eyebrow raised at the Katani. Zan preferred using holocomms when he could, and found that after a bit the others grew used to keeping their holo transceivers on. Stefan chuckled. She's cleared me for desk work. Nothing strenuous yet. I've still got to let my ribs heal. He winced. Mick sure did a number on me when he tried to heal me. Stefan's voice was odd. Then he shook himself. What can I do for you? I need the Pargila cleared for intelligence work. No flight plan logged due to sensitivity. Remember us telling you about that squad of Ratkans on Renvar I ran into along with my new Padawan? I can take care of that. Stefan frowned slightly. I do. Do you have a lead? He asked, his face brightening somewhat as Anne mentioned his Padawan, not the apprentice who assisted me. When did you want to leave? I can pass a message to Callista if you don't see her before you go. I may have something, Stefan. It depends on whether Sharon can find it first or if we do it the hard way. Either way, I'm curious why an Imperial squad shows up behind Sith lines with no fatalities or even signs of battle. As for Calico, I'm calming her next. That is, unless Althea hasn't run her ragged. Stefan chuckled again. Are you suggesting that she can't keep up with her own Padawan? He asked. Then he sobered. Indeed, I'd like to know the answer to that as well. Zan nodded, and then sighed. Well, that's what we're going to find out. I'll report in as I can, scramble channels. Meanwhile, don't go overboard at work. If Jade won't kill you for hurting yourself with it, Calico will. When Stefan laughed again, he smiled. Canadius out. And then he closed the comm. It was time to find out if Sharon's tech skills did the job. And I'm going to pause and take a drink. We have an ad coming up in about a minute and a half, so just keep that in mind. Ad breaks are a great time to get a drink of water, have a stretch, take a restroom break. So please take care of yourself. I can start a little bit, maybe get a paragraph in. Sharon looked up, rubbing her eyes from staring intently at the screen. I've found something. It's only a fragment, but maybe it'll help. She sighed and leaned back, working her shoulders to loosen them up before taking a sip of her Behat. Then she pointed to the information on the screen. All she'd found was the garbled fragment of a document that ordered the Delta Squad to Renvar. Zan was about to calm Callista when Sharon's discovery snagged his attention. He picked up his calf mug and returned to the desk before scanning the information. He then scowled, fatigue showing in his face. The 72nd Intelligence Command. I've never even heard of them. Something new? Sharon shrugged, rubbing the back of her neck absent-mindedly. I'm not sure. It's either a new group or one that was undercover until now. That begs the question of why I could even find Even find this if the squad was Black Ops. Normally their security would be better. She trailed off, flushing and fidgeting. Just because they work with intelligence doesn't mean they were Black Ops. Remember, New Republic intelligence has well-known divisions. None appear to be Black Ops or units on the surface. He took a sip of his caf. And I don't know if we're doing an ad or not. He took a sip of his caf and sighed. Got anything from the New Republic database concerning this unit? Sharon frowned and reached for her mug without looking, bringing it to her lips before she answered. Not much, I'm afraid. One small note about them is from one of the New Republic's recent military campaigns. It looks like they appeared there as they did on Renvar, like they've been placed to misguide those involved. She frowned deeper. From what I know of the Remnant, they aren't as expansionist as the Empire was. So why would they be sticking their noses into our business? One step at a time, Sharon. Let's pin down who sent them there in the first place. Then let's speculate and hunt later, he said with a hint of... Oops, and I'm going to stop there because we're in an ad. Yep. Alright. I am taking the opportunity to get a drink of water. I suggest you guys do the same. Alright. Should be back in about 30 seconds. Alright, and we are back from our ad. Thank you for hanging out and keeping me company through those ads. I appreciate you. And let me... Okay, here we go. One step at a time, Sharon. Let's pin down who sent them there in the first place, and then let's speculate and hunt, he said with a hint of irritation in his voice. Too much speculation led to too many paths taken, which were always well away from where your original goal would end up. Okay, try something different. Tap into the Imperial database and cross-reference that division with active assignments. I want to see who signs off for them the most first. Sharon flushed slightly and nodded, tapping away at the keyboard briefly. Beads of sweat appeared on her forehead as she worked past the sentry programs, but even inside she had to be careful. This was a military database she was hacking, after all. Slowly, she sifted through the files until she found something. It looks like an Admiral Foch has been giving them their orders. Their last few deployments have been to several places in New Republic territory, including Jedi and Sith holdings. Zan raised an eyebrow. An admiral would be pretty high on the chain of command to send a Black Ops unit on various assignments, so whatever he was doing was not his own choice, but top-down orders. But who? With all the chaos in the Remnant's political system, warlords were sworn into positions one week and executed or in civil war the next. Wasn't Foch last stationed at Narawan on diplomatic duty with the Ascendancy? He asked. Sharon blinked. He was. It seems odd that he went from a diplomatic tour to intelligence. Zan shook his head and moaned. This is giving me nightmares already. But here we go. One last check. See if you can find out why he was suddenly pulled from Narawan. It may mean a deeper trip into the firewalls, but we won't get blue flagged. We're routing through systems the Ratkans never touch. He caught the look on Sharon's face and explained. My master came up with the term for a slicer retag. A tracking bot follows a slicer back through the net to the originating system. However, if a system is hardwired into multiple networks, the blue flag can only go as far as the first network on the chain. Again, Sharon sighed. This was getting intense. She rolled her neck a few times before she turned back to the screen and began typing. It took a lot longer this time, and she muttered several curses under her breath. Her eyes narrowed at the line of code, and she read further down the screen. Then she indicated the message. From this, it sounds like the Ascendancy caught him trying to keep tabs on their military movements and hack into their network. Looks like the Remnant pulled him out to save him from the Chiss criminal system. They don't treat people trying to steal military secrets very nicely. A low whistle was all he could muster at the moment. From slicing into the Chiss mainframe to deployments into several hostile areas, there was no accurate information about what was actually taken. I hate it when I smell rat can tricks. It always leads to Ossic like this. He ran his hand through his hair in frustration. Log out. We can't do anything more from here. She nodded and backed up carefully from the connection before she slumped in the chair and pinched the bridge of her nose. That was close. And not good news, either. With a deep sigh, she downed the rest of her behot at it as if it were ale. So, now that we know at least that much, what do we do? Zan smirked. We get to where the action is hot, of course. Desk jobs are for old men. With that, he counted the med center and, not to his surprise, came hollow to face with Callista's bubbly apprentice. Sequoia, Allie, is the doc around, or is she wrist-deep in someone's chest cavity at the moment? Althea smiled at Zan, her eyes dancing at his joke. Just a second, Zan. Her voice trailed off, and then she came back. She just finished in Surgical 1. She'll be right along, if you'll wait a moment. I've got nothing better to do at the moment, other than making sure Sharon doesn't collapse with exhaustion, he quipped again and smiled at Althea before turning to Sharon. Hit the fresher, and get some gear that will have you blending in with the rest of us scum. Bounty hunter type, and if I see robes, I'll space you. Althea smiled. Just put her on a behot drip. It works for Master Callista, she told Zan with a grin. Sharon swallowed, but then grinned. Yes, sir. I shouldn't be more than... She glanced at the chrono on the screen. An hour. I'll meet you back here. Zan raised a hand for Sharon to wait, and he reached into a belt pouch and pulled 2 key cards before tossing them in her direction. The first card provides access to Master Residency level suites. Callista and I live in 338. The second one is access to the Pargila, co-pilot's chair only, mind you. I'll get you set up with a Stealth X after we return. I'll meet you at the Pargila this time, actually. He turned back to Althea's image and said, Never mind the call. I'll swing by for a minute in person. Sure thing, Althea told him with a grin before she signed off. Sharon's eyes widened. Does this mean I'll be moving out of the student dormitories? She grinned a little at Zan's comment regarding the Pargila. No need to worry. I know not to mess with the systems. She winked. A Stealth X, eh? Not bad. They're well suited to this type of work. Isn't the Pargila modified to carry a couple of them? Zan returned her grin. Mess with the systems and I'll find a toothbrush and let you clean all the freshers in the men's main gym just 'cause I can. He thought to himself, man, she's sounding just like us now. Dear Force, are we all that bad? Next thing you know, she'll tell me she's Corellian. Zan nodded at her last statement. Hull docking clamps, but the payload is off. It's only 1 Stealth X and my Besalic. Sharon blinked. Yes, sir. Though wouldn't that require the compensators to be rebalanced? Zan mock frowned. What is this, Galactic Hot Flyers Weekly? Get your gear and get your shebs to the Pargila. Save the tech talk for later. As she took off, he yelled after her, And yeah, you'll see your living quarters have changed. Talk to the quartermaster. She rolled her eyes, but she smiled. Understood. See you then. She waved over her shoulder. She took off from the office. Her first stop was the quartermaster's to pick up the proper gear and equipment. Temple Medical Center. Meanwhile, Zan went up 20 levels to the sprawling med center complex to talk to his wife. Sure enough, Althea was the first to spot him. My timing must suck or something. Busy day, I take it, Allie? Althea sighed and brushed her black hair from her face. We're still handling some of the wounded from Renvar, but it's thinning out. Can I get you some calf while I see if Master Callista is free? Her voice trailed off and she grinned a little as she spotted Callista around the corner, pulling off her surgical mask and the pale green cap off her scrubs. I'll just go get your calf, then. And she disappeared into the small kitchenette. Voray, Althea, he said to the retreating Padawan's back before looking over at his wife. Her surgical gown was covered in 2 types of blood, red and green, and it looked like she'd been trampled by a herd of wild nerfs. I take it we lost quite a few lives this morning by the look on your face, he said, wanting to be warm and sympathetic, but realizing she was too much in the medical frame of mind to comprehend that just yet. Lek, was Callista's tired reply as she wrapped her arms around his waist. Sorry. She grabbed a towel when she noticed she'd smeared some of the blood on his Beskar again. I don't even know how long I've been in surgery. She took a deep breath and sank down in the chair behind her desk, drawing Zan close into a hug. He hugged her back as best as he could. Can you take a break for a bit? Or do you have more criticals lined up? He asked, gently, knowing now was not the time to be harsh. If you don't, Althea can look after the center while you get some shut-eye. Callista rubbed her eyes and murmured a quiet thank you when Althea slid 2 mugs onto the desk, one of Behat and one of calf. She took a slow sip before she answered. It's slowing down. We handled the more critical cases over the last day or so. I think I can take a few hours off. She yawned, and Althea eyed her for a moment. All right, that's it. You're to go home and sleep for 12 hours. Padawan's orders. Althea's smile was sympathetic. Between myself and the orderlies, we can handle things. She'd only been on shift for a couple of hours, whereas Callista hadn't stopped for about 14. Zan laughed, along with Althea's statement. I agree. From your Padawan and your husband, you're off duty for 12. He leaned in and kissed his wife long and deep, not caring that her breath was as bad as goop of fish Tuesdays in the main cafeteria. Too bad, though. I'm heading on duty myself. She kissed him back, not caring that Althea was still there. She clung to him for a little when they came up for air, finally. Yes, Sire, she said with a sigh, her eyes twinkling. Then she frowned. You're off on assignment again? Zan nodded. You know us spies. Oops, and I'm going to stop there. Yeah, because we're in an ad. Here we go. We'll take a break and take a drink. Yeah, I'm taking a break because we're in an ad. It's not letting me know that we have the... Okay. Yeah, it's not letting me. Okay. Yeah. Anyway. Zan nodded. You know us spies. If unanswered questions exist, we look for answers. He ran his hand over his face for a second before continuing. I found a trail of breadcrumbs, but nothing conclusive. But whatever the rat cans are up to, it's definitely no good. Callista frowned and wrapped her arms around his waist before pulling him close. Keep me informed as you can. She leaned away from him for a moment to sip her Behat before she passed him his calf. You and the council both. Since we're married, you received Alpha 1 priority clearance for intelligence files. I set that up yesterday. He motioned for Althea to leave the room for a moment so he could give his wife her passcode, and then motioned for her to rejoin them shortly after. No, you're fine. You are fine. That's been the story of my life today. I was dragging this morning, so I totally feel that. Let's see. Meanwhile, don't run yourself ragged, CRA. You might be senior healer, but you have an excellent support staff to draw from. Not to mention a Padawan that keeps looking funny at us every time we kiss. He smirked at Althea. As for you, don't follow your master's reckless working habits. 10 hours maximum today, you hear? Yes, sir. Althea nodded as she came back into the room, grinning lopsidedly. We've got enough orderlies and a few knights in the rotation. We should be able to handle just about anything. Zan nodded and drained the remains of his mug of caf before walking to the reclaimer to wash it and setting it to dry. Well, it looks like I'd better get going. The first fuel stop is 35 hours from here. He returned to his wife and embraced her for a good 2 minutes. May the Force guide you well, Sharika. And don't worry about me. I have a new pain in the neck to worry about. Don't need you to worry over me now, he said. Callista broke off from the kiss with a smile and a small sigh. That pain in the neck wouldn't happen to have brown hair and freckles, would it? She asked with a grin. I still worry about you. Brown hair, freckles, and a seemingly quiet and introspective attitude that was just a front for a younger female version of the rogue. I swear, if she's Corellian, he growled before chuckling. I'll be fine. Hopefully, no longer than a week's worth of work. Callista giggled. What, can't handle more than one at a time? She then smirked. I might take a trip to the Katani Praxium myself and get away for a few days. Stefan suggested it a couple of days ago. I could learn a lot there, which would give me some downtime. Zan smiled. That would actually be a good idea. And if you do learn something, you can share it with me. He looked at his chrono and sighed. Oh man, I'd better make trails or Sharon may have reprogrammed the Pargila into Bith by now. He kissed her again briefly and then hurried over to hug Althea before slipping on his helmet and walking out of the room, waving to both of them. So far, so good, he thought. Now I'm going to see if it keeps getting better from here. Alright. True to her word, Sharon made quick work of her trip to the quartermaster's. He'd been able to supply her with a few sets of clothing and then sent her on her way. Then she'd gone up to the apartment and found her room. A hot shower helped loosen the nervous tension in her shoulders. Zan wasn't so bad, if a little rough around the edges, but she liked that. People who were too polite made her wary. She dressed quickly and gathered the rest of her gear for the trip, clipping her saber to her belt as she left. The trip to the hangar was quick, and it didn't take her long to spot the angular lines of the Pargila among the rest of the small craft. She had to admit, she was itching to see how the ship handled. She swiped her pass card through the scanner and slipped aboard, looking around in wonder. It was evident that the ship had been heavily modified in some areas. She grinned as she peeked through hatches as she made her way through the corridor to the cockpit. Zan stopped by the apartment to change for the trip. Normally, he would leave his armor on and play the role of a typical bounty hunter, but after the situation on Renvar and the Imperial squad, he knew that he couldn't risk being identified. However, he wasn't about to go parading in the temple with his helmet off. Yet either. While he trusted the Jedi, he saved the honor of those knowing what his face looked like for an intimate few. So, it looked a little weird to others seeing a man dressed up like a smuggler walking down the corridors of the temple with his red and black helmet on. The sergeant-at-arms laughed upon seeing Zan enter the docking bay. Canadius, just when I think you've run out of ways to entertain me, you do something like this. Zan growled and turned to look at him. And you're lucky you're on our side, or that little comment of yours would have earned you a blaster bolt up your shebs. As the sergeant-at-arms paled, Zan continued to walk towards the Pargila, chuckling at the small victory. But when he found his way on board, he found his new apprentice with her feet propped on top of the controls, leaning back in the co-pilot's chair as if she owned the place. If the Pargila isn't ready to go, I'm going to stick you in an engine hold and have you oil things. Sharon spun around and for all the world looked like she was trying to suppress a giggle. She chewed her lip for a moment before she spoke. I ran a pre-flight 10 minutes ago. She's all yours. Inwardly, she let out a slow breath. It was so hard to tell when he was being serious and when he was joking. But she hoped that it would be easier over time. She quirked an eyebrow at him and turned back to her controls as she began to bring the engines out of standby. Zan pulled off his helmet and stowed it with the spare armor he had aboard and made his way back to the cockpit, sorry. He jumped over the back of the pilot's chair with ease that showed it was routine. After strapping in, he looked out the armor plast and ran a subsystems check and found them optimal. All right, kid. Read your screens and give me readings on main systems if you think you're so good. Sharon flushed and opened her mouth to retort, but then closed it. Engines are optimal, weapons are on standby, shields are operating at peak efficiency. We've been cleared for a takeoff window in... She glanced at her screen. 5 minutes. She took a breath. Life support's good, and we've been stocked up with enough consumables and water stores for at least 2 weeks. Zan powered up the thrusters. Acknowledged. Good work, Sharon. He felt her nervousness rippling through the cockpit. Udesi, if you're going to work with me and the rest of my family closely, drop the restraint till you need it. And stop being so damn jittery. He grinned. Do the honors and notify docking control we're standing by. You've earned that. She smiled and nodded. Sorry, she said quietly before she punched in the code for the docking control. Docking control, this is Parjila. We are ready for takeoff. A few seconds passed. Roger, Parjila. You are cleared. Skylanes are clear along vector 723x195. May the Force be with you. Sharon thanked them politely and cut the connection, looking to Zan for instructions. Hold on, kid, he said simply. And with that, he throttled up before she had time to settle in, and they'd cleared the docking bay and entered the skylane, leaving behind a very annoyed docking bay crew. Throttling up that high was nearly suicide, but it was yet one more way Zan showed his roguish streak. Keep an eye on the traffic above us. As soon as the upper lane is clear, let me know. I'd like to be in that lane before calming syntax control. Sharon nodded, but she couldn't help being amused, letting an amused snort slip out. She'd felt the spike of annoyance from the docking bay crew. She shook her head and turned back to the sensor screen. They'd slipped neatly into the traffic stream, which took skill. The traffic above them was moving along at a pretty good pace, but she saw an opening. There, she indicated on her screen. She knew it wouldn't be there long. Zan kicked in the thrusters to full and made for the upper lane, thus cutting off a fair bit of traffic in the process. Spaceship rules, you bunch of slackers, Zan shouted in response to some of the gestures he was getting from the other pilots. Then he spotted one rude gesture from a Gran. Where did you learn that from? I don't think your mother would approve. He settled back a bit and opened the comm to Syntax 1, the small moon of Coruscant that was headquarters to Coruscant Traffic Control. Syntax 1, this is Jedi Vehicle JIT 717-842P requesting orbital clearance. Authorization Genth Usk Kresh 6519. Standing by. Over. Syntax Control copies. 842P. A rather bored-sounding controller answered. What is your destination? Check your authorization code, Syntax Control. Classified via Jedi Charter. Or are you just trying to grind my gears for the hell of it, Zan said with a hint of annoyance. Cutting the audio, he turned to Sharon. He's probably looking for a commendation from the New Republic. Get a Jedi to spill, a new rank is mailed to him. Sharon grinned. Perhaps, though the job tends to be rather boring. The controller came back a moment later, sounding slightly flustered. Apologies, Master Jedi. I've cleared a vector for you. Priority clearance. Bank to the following heading. 580x239. Safe travels. Opening the channel again, Zan replied. 580 by 239er. Acknowledge syntax control. Over and out. Zan smirked after he cut the comm. So they gave us the military lane, huh? Looks like bye-bye commendation. He piloted the Parjila into the military lane, and once they broke the atmosphere. Hyperlane in 5 minutes. The first stop is Nar Shaddaa for refueling, and then on to the remnant from there. In the meantime, did you happen to pick up where Foch is stationed? Sharon nodded and tucked a few strands of dark hair behind her ear. While I was waiting for you, I was able to find out where he was last seen. Monalinst. The planet was hotly contested during the Clone Wars and backed the currency of both sides. They have no qualms about what they fund as long as it's profitable for them. She shrugged. Considering the history of the Empire, him being there isn't all that surprising, really. Zan blinked for a second. No, it's not surprising, but it's also about to get more interesting. The intergalactic banking clan is one of the guarantors of the New Republic, even at the extreme annoyance of the warlords. Zan pursed his lips. So, Here's what we have so far. A mystery Ratcan squad showing up in a hostile area. An admiral who was given the squad to oversee after being pulled from diplomatic duty with the Chiss when the Chiss suspected illegal activity. And now a station at one of the galactic pillars of commerce. He shook his head. It's too early to speculate, but I don't like how this looks. Sharon chuckled. Oh, and I'm going to stop right there because we have an ad. Oh, actually, no, it's incoming. Excuse me. I really wish they'd pop it up somewhere else. Anyway. Sharon chuckled and blew a breath between her teeth. You weren't the only one. So far, it looks to me like he's lining his pockets, but that still doesn't explain the squad. I don't suppose just walking into his office and asking nicely would help? She asked. If you want to find out what being one with the Force too early in your life is like, then no. He chuckled. They were now on top of the hyperlane. Prepare for inversion in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then the universe around the ship exploded into star lines before settling into the familiar whirling texture of hyperspace. Too early to even think that, Sharon. We've got too many questions that are unrelated right now. Perhaps the money angle is just random speculation when we find out more. For now, all we have is what we do know, and that's maneuvering around New Republic territories, a squad showing up in weird places, and no puppet master. Sharon blushed slightly at his rebuke and nervously rubbed the back of her neck. She always found the mottled blackness of hyperspace soothing. I haven't been able to find much else. He's been keeping a rather low profile, even here. She frowned. Zan grinned. And that's why being criminal scum pays so well. Ever wonder why pirates, smugglers, and bounty hunters on the top of their game know more than the military types at times? The criminal underground contains probably the best form of information brokering on anything you want, but the trick is you have to be the one to find it. And that's pretty much it. Like I said, it's really short and pretty much unfinished. So, yeah, that's kind of it. Oh, it's only 8 o'clock. My goodness. I guess we could chat for a while, if you guys are cool with that. Could talk a little bit about my writing process or things that I'm up to lately. Probably have to swap categories. I'm gonna do that though. Like I said, really, really short. Basically one shot at this point. So that's all there is for that one. And I will begin working on editing the next story probably next week. I will actually be out of town. Oh, excuse me. Let me swap categories here. Let's see. I will actually be out of town. This weekend. But I hope to start working on the next story when I get back. Okay. Is Panda still here? I don't know. She is. Panda's still here. I totally feel you on running slow today, Desneva. That has been the story of my life, like, all day. I have been trying to kind of address the issues that I've been having with sleeping. I have mentioned them a little bit, kind of in passing, but it's something that I'm trying to work on because getting adequate sleep is really important for a multitude of reasons. It helps you stay healthy. It helps your immune system stay strong. So I have been working on trying to get more sleep so that I'm not so tired all the time. So that's been something that I've been working on. But yes, like I said, I will be out of town this weekend. I'm going to be camping, so probably won't even have cell reception. But I'm looking forward to it. I'm taking my youth group kids to Maine for our fall camporee, so it should be fun. And I believe we're about ready to have an ad. Should pop up here in a second. So we'll be camping and hopefully having fun and no rain. It's really hard to tell with the weather. It's been threatening rain for like the last 3 days, but I don't think it's actually rained. We haven't had a decent rain up here in probably a month. So we're somewhat in a drought. So I'm hoping we get at least a little bit, maybe tonight, tomorrow. So it's not Friday. I mean, I've camped in the rain before. I'm sure many of you have, but it's not very fun to set up tents in the rain. And there's the ad. Okay. There's the ad. Alright. Okay. What? Oh. Trying to make sure I drink all the water. Let's see. Should be back from our ad in about 20 seconds. All right. Okay. And we are back from our ad. Yeah, so I was not actually expecting that story to be that short. I knew it was really short, but I didn't realize it was actually that short. It's been quite a while since I even touched it, so it's a lot shorter than I expected. I will be back streaming on Wednesday next week. Should be SWTOR. So would love to see you guys at that point. I think I may actually go ahead and end stream a little early. I do have some prep to do because we are actually leaving tomorrow night to head to Maine. We're heading up a little early. We took Friday off, so we're gonna head up Thursday night. So I think that I will actually say goodnight to you guys, and I hope that you have a good rest of your evening and a good rest of your week. And I hope that you enjoyed our hour of cozy reading time. It's definitely something that I look forward to in the middle of my week, whether it's cozy reading or playing SWTOR with all of you. It's the highlight of my week. Welcome in. I'm actually getting ready to head out for the evening. But thank you for joining. I do appreciate it. If you are new, I'm not sure if you are, but if you are new, my name is Meshla. I am primarily an audiobook streamer. I write and read Star Wars fan fiction, my own, and I also play Star Wars: The Old Republic. So tonight I was reading a story called Behind Enemy Lines. It's pretty much a one-shot. Most of the stories that I have written were written cooperatively 15 to 20 years ago, so this is the first time that I'm actually touching many of them. Oh, sure. Give me just 1 second and I will link you. So you can find them on Archive of Our Own. You can also find them on... You can find them via my VODs that I export to YouTube or here on Twitch. So, and you, the nice thing about Archive of Our Own is that you can read at your own pace and you can catch up. So, if you'd like to read them, please feel free to do so. I hope you enjoy. It's been a long-term hobby of mine for, oh my goodness, almost 25 years at this point. Yeah. Like I said, I started writing in high school, so it feels really strange when I think about how long I actually have been writing for. Started out cooperatively with a group of people, but at this point it's just me, so I'm maintaining the stories and sharing them with all of you. And I'm continuing to work on stories that focus on my own characters. So I'm still trying to keep up with the writing, even at this point when life tries to get in the way a lot more than I would like. Thank you, Frosty Tools. Yeah. Yep. Yes, they do. They lurk in the shadows. Yes, but thank you for asking. I appreciate it. I hope you enjoy reading. I do enjoy sharing the stories with everybody. And it's a nice way for me to kind of break up my week and have a little comfy cozy time. You know, grab some, have some snacks, have some tea. Just, it's a really great way for not only me to chill out in the middle of the week, but also provide some cozy chill vibes for everybody else, which is, I really like being able to do that. So, well, we'll come in and I hope you enjoy reading. And I am actually going to go ahead and end it here. I do have some things to take care of for this weekend, so I do need to sign off a little early this evening. But I will see you guys all back on Wednesday if you're interested in playing some SWTOR. I play mostly on Starforge, which is a North American server, and I will be just getting my toes in general shenanigans, which is what I usually do. Just having fun. I'm not any kind of hardcore player. I play for fun. We do silly things. We just have fun. We hang out. So hopefully I will see you guys all back on Wednesday. Have a great week. And I hope you have a great weekend. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate each and every one of you. And I will see you next week. Thank you so much. Bye, guys.